If you've ever wondered why a woman can't stop thinking about someone who's barely available, or why she worries about a man who says little but moves with certainty, the answer lies in a subtle but powerful force: emotional detachment, not coldness, not apathy. A calm, deliberate internal state where you are no longer looking for emotional survival through her validation. When a man masters this, he becomes a psychological puzzle, and puzzles make people curious, and curiosity, left unanswered, becomes worry. Here's what's fascinating. Most men try to win a woman's affection by doing more, saying more, being more available, proving their worth at every turn. And in doing so, become emotionally transparent, predictable, accessible. But the men women worry about, the ones they lose sleep over, often the ones who give them something deeper: uncertainty. Not in a toxic, manipulative way, in a way that forces a woman to question her place in your world. Because you don't make her the center of yours. See, when you're emotionally detached, not dismissive, but centered, you stop over-explaining yourself. You stop oversharing. You don't rush to clarify every silence or explain every move. And the moment you stop feeding her constant emotional reassurance, something profound happens. Her mind fills in the gaps. Her imagination begins to build stories. She starts to interpret your behavior. And in that space of interpretation, she becomes emotionally engaged. She worries, not because you've hurt her, but because you've become an unknown, and humans fear what they can't define. This isn't about disappearing. This isn't about playing hard to get. It's about having such deep emotional self-control that your validation isn't up for negotiation. You're present, but not possessive. You listen, don't always reveal. You care, but don't depend. And this creates what I call emotional polarity. It's the gap between her desire for intimacy and your calm detachment that keeps her thinking, what's going on with him? That question is powerful. Question makes her worry, not out of fear, but because she feels something valuable could slip away. Psychologically, this taps into a concept known as emotional contrast. When someone is always available, always expressive, we adjust to that rhythm and stop valuing it. When there's a shift, when emotional input decreases without warning, the brain registers it as a potential loss, and loss triggers more urgency than gain. It's not that you're being mean. It's that you're no longer emotionally leaning in, and that reversal of energy forces her to lean in more. Philosophically, it comes down to this: a man who doesn't make a woman the source of his emotional identity becomes someone she has to earn. He becomes an internal sovereign, anchored in himself, guided by purpose, not thrown off by every emotional wave. Sovereignty makes her feel unstable in the best way, because it's in your stability that she finds something rare, something she can't control. What we can't control, we obsess over. So yes, if you want a woman to worry about you, not because you're being reckless, because you're becoming unreachable on an emotional level, start by detaching from the need to be understood. Stop performing for approval. Trust your silence. Let her feel the space, and she will chase the peace she once felt in your presence. You don't need to disappear. You just need to stop proving. And when you do that, when your calm distance becomes louder than any words, you'll no longer have to ask if she's thinking about you. She'll be wondering where you went, why she can't stop thinking about you, and what she's willing to do to bring your energy back. Something deeply unsettling and strangely magnetic about someone who's always been there and suddenly isn't. When you're consistent with your presence, with your communication, with the emotional space you offer a woman, and then you withdraw just enough to disrupt the rhythm, you trigger something primal. A woman begins to feel the shift in energy before she even fully registers what's changed. It's in the pause between your texts, in the silence after a deep conversation, in the way your gaze lingers less, and that subtle distance. It makes her worry, not because you're playing games, not because you've gone cold, but because you've created a contrast. Emotional contrast is the foundation of desire. We only crave what we feel slipping away. And when you've built a pattern of connection, of warmth, attentiveness, presence, and then interrupt that pattern with a slight withdrawal, her nervous system reacts. Not with logic, but with emotional alertness. She starts wondering, did I do something? Is something wrong? Why isn't he showing up the same way? This is not manipulation. It's a psychological reality. Consistency builds safety, but safety alone doesn't build desire. Desire is born from uncertainty, emotional gap between what she felt yesterday And what she senses today becomes a space where longing grows. The absence of something she once counted on makes her rethink your value. She begins replaying conversations. She rereads messages. She notices your silence, not because you ghosted her, but because you no longer orbit around her. Now here's where most men get it wrong. They either smother or vanish. Neither of these creates true emotional gravity. What works is calibrated distance, the ability to be fully present when you're there, and fully absent when you choose to step back. The contrast between the two creates weight. It makes your presence meaningful. It makes your silence noticeable. And in that emotional tension, she starts reaching for you. It's the same principle that applies to music. A beat that never changes becomes background noise. A beat that suddenly pauses, even for a moment, grabs your attention. The silence becomes louder than the sound. That's what calibrated distance does in relationships. It takes you out of the background and makes you relevant. Not because you're louder, because your presence had a rhythm and your absence now has an echo. Psychologically, this also taps into a woman's innate emotional intuition. Women are wired to sense micro shifts in behavior. They notice tone, timing, energy. When your consistent presence suddenly dips, even slightly, triggers a cognitive loop, she starts scanning for answers. Not because she's insecure, because the connection she felt is now uncertain, and our minds hate uncertainty more than anything. Philosophically, it's about balance. You are not there to be consumed. You are not her emotional entertainment. You are a man with depth, with direction, with boundaries. When you show up fully and then retreat with purpose, not with resentment, not with emotional immaturity, with sovereignty, you remind her that your world is bigger than just her. And in that reminder, she recalibrates. She starts to value what she had. She starts to worry about what she might lose. This isn't about withholding love. It's about becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to perform to be remembered. When your consistency is broken by silence, not because you're lost, because you're focused, you become unforgettable. You become the man she thinks about when everything else goes quiet. So don't fear the space. Let your silence say what words never could. If your presence was real, your absence will be felt. Let's talk about what happens when a man withdraws not out of anger, confusion, or manipulation, but because his attention is tethered to something greater, a deeper mission, a higher pursuit. A man who chooses to redirect his energy into purpose becomes emotionally unavailable not by default, but by design. And that kind of distance, purpose-driven distance, is the most attractive, most unsettling form of absence a woman can feel, because it doesn't come from emotional immaturity. It comes from inner discipline. When your time is claimed by something bigger than her, your career, your vision, your spiritual growth, she begins to notice that she doesn't own your energy. You don't check in every second. You're not waiting for her call. You're not explaining why you didn't respond. And most importantly, you're not apologizing for your silence. That doesn't create resentment in her, it creates tension. And that tension, when paired with your emotional steadiness, is what makes her worry. Not because you're being cold, because she realizes she doesn't have as much access to you as she thought. And that realization creates urgency. Purpose is the highest form of masculine attraction. It tells the world, I am not yours. I am mine first. It's what separates men who chase from men who attract. When your focus is on becoming, on building, refining, ascending, you naturally create emotional scarcity. And scarcity breeds value. Not because you're trying to be rare, but because your time, your attention, your presence, it's not easily available. It's earned. It's selective. And women feel that. Deeply think about it. Most men disappear out of insecurity. They get quiet when they're hurt. They ghost when they don't know what they want. Kind of silence triggers confusion, not desire. But when you're consistently present, emotionally grounded, and then you pull back with purpose, it's different. It's powerful, because now your absence has a reason. It's rooted in progress, not in pain. And that kind of distance makes her respect you, even while it makes her ache for your presence. This is also where a lot of men go wrong. They try to explain their silence. They overcommunicate their purpose. I've been busy. I've been working. I'm just grinding. But if you really want to make an impression, live it. Don't talk it. A woman knows when a man is immersed in something meaningful. She can feel it in the tone of your voice, the depth of your eye contact, the brevity of your messages. You're not emotionally absent. You're just not emotionally dependent. And that's what makes you powerful. It's important to understand this isn't about neglect. Women don't crave emotional abandonment. What they respond to is polarity, the energetic push and pull that creates anticipation. When you give her presence with full attention, and then take that presence away not randomly, but rhythmically, because your time belongs to something larger, she starts feeling the weight of that absence. And that's where worry creeps in. Not the fear of being unloved, but the fear of being forgotten, the fear of being replaced by your purpose. And that fear creates devotion. Philosophically, it speaks to a timeless truth. A man without purpose is a man without gravity. He floats from moment to moment, clinging to validation, hoping to be needed. A man with purpose stands still while the world orbits around him. He doesn't chase connection. He deepens it when it aligns, and releases it when it distracts. That's the kind of man who doesn't just attract a woman, he lives in her mind. So when you withdraw, do it with intention. Let your silence be a reflection of your mission. Because when your purpose becomes your priority, your absence stops being an accident and starts becoming unforgettable. One of the most underestimated ways to make a woman worry about you, deeply, emotionally, and even subconsciously, is by mastering your emotional expression. Not by being robotic, not by shutting down, but by being selective about what you share and intentional about how you reveal it. Emotional control is not emotional suppression. It's the ability to feel deeply while choosing what the world is allowed to see. And when a woman can feel that there's more inside you than you're letting out, she starts to wonder. And that wonder becomes worry. Let me explain. In most relationships, men are taught to either bottle everything up or spill everything out. Both are extremes, and neither creates mystery. A man who is too emotionally closed comes off as detached or unavailable. A man who overshares loses his intrigue. The balance is in knowing that your emotions are yours, not hers to manage. When you express yourself, it should never be out of compulsion. It should come from a place of sovereignty, not desperation. Women are naturally tuned into emotion. They read energy more than words. So when you're with her, and you express warmth, vulnerability, even affection, but then hold back from exposing every corner of your soul, it creates a kind of emotional asymmetry, not imbalance, but depth. She senses that you feel more than you show, that you think more than you say, and that emotional discipline makes her curious. It makes her want to decode you, and when she can't, that's when she starts worrying. Not out of insecurity, but out of fascination. This isn't about being cryptic. It's about letting your emotional world speak through your actions, not just your words. You stay calm in conflict. You listen more than you react. You smile with intention. You remain composed when provoked. All of these behaviors send a powerful messaging. I have an inner life you can't completely access. And what a woman can't fully access, she craves. When you're not emotionally reactive, you show her that you're in control, not just of your emotions, but of yourself. You're not seeking a reaction. You're not performing. And this self-regulation builds trust, but also unpredictability. Because now, she doesn't know what will touch you deeply or what will pass right through you. She starts to test, to engage, to explore. And in that subtle pursuit, her emotional investment increases. And let's be clear, emotional control doesn't mean being unfeeling. It means being able to sit with your feelings without letting them hijack your presence. You still express. You choose how and when. And that restraint, that conscious management of your emotional energy, makes you rare. It's the difference between a man who is emotionally chaotic and one who is emotionally disciplined. And discipline, in any form, is incredibly attractive. Philosophically, this taps into the essence of masculine mystery. A man who reveals everything becomes a mirror. He reflects, but doesn't hold. A man who guards his emotional world, not from fear, but from strength, becomes a container. He holds space. He grounds. And that grounding becomes irresistible, because in a world of emotional noise, silence becomes magnetic. So if you want a woman to worry about you, not because she's insecure, because she's emotionally intrigued, stop offering your entire emotional world on a silver platter. Let her sense it. Let her feel it through your presence, your explanations. Be open, but not exposed. Be expressive, but not exhausting. Let your emotional depth exist, not perform. Because when your emotions are no longer entertainment, but evidence of your inner strength, she won't just want to understand you. She'll need to, and that need is where the worry begins.